Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wicked Sports podcast for January 8th, 2025. Hope you're doing quite well wherever you are, wherever you're listening. We got a few stories here today, some interesting, and a little bit of a playoff preview for the AFC and the NFC. But let's start off with the first big story. So, the last podcast, we talked a little bit about Black Monday. Of course, that is the day where organizations usually let go of their coaches, but we had a late addition to Black Monday. Actually, it's just a Black Tuesday firing as the Las Vegas Raiders fired Antonio Pierce after going 4-13 in 2024 and finishing in last place in the AFC West. So Pierce was the interim coach in 2023 after the firing of Josh McDaniel, who, really was not getting the job done whatsoever for the Raiders. And honestly, he was a pretty effective head coach. He went 5-4 over the last 9 games. The Raiders finished 8-9. They were second in the AFC West. And you think, hey, former player, former Super Bowl champion, maybe he is the definition of a player's coach, someone who players will rally around. And maybe you don't need years and years of learning the craft. And, I don't want to take away, he did coach for many years in the NFL, but he was not someone who people would have, going into 2023 thought was up for a head coaching job, but he ended up being the perfect fit for the 2023 Las Vegas Raiders. Unfortunately, it's 2024 where he was coaching the Raiders again, and it did not go very well for Antonio Pierce. Again, as we said, 4-13. They went into the season. They tried to reshape this roster. They got rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. Instead, they went with Gardner Minshew, a journeyman quarterback, maybe somebody that they thought could potentially keep it, 8-9, 9-8, someone who's had success in the league, but unfortunately that wasn't the case to start the season. And then of course he got injured, so that led to second year player Aiden O'Connell to essentially audition to see if he's the future of the Raiders. And I think we can pretty safely say that probably won't be the case. Now they're here. I think they have the 6th overall pick in the draft. And what I found very odd about all of this was that, one, you know me, I don't like when coaches are only given 1 year to figure things out. That first year is kind of like, we're tearing everything down. We have to play the games. We're going to put out a product that's probably going to be subpar, and we're going to hopefully reshape it in our image, in how we view how a football team should be constructed. So I always think it's kind of foolish to fire a head coach after just their first season. Even if they went 4-13, Bill Belichick 5-11 for the New England Patriots, one of the greatest coaches of all time. You need to give these coaches time to install everything, to get the right people around them, to get the players bought into what they're selling. And I don't think 1 year is enough time. So that's my opinion there. I said the same thing with Gerard Mayo, where I didn't feel like he was given a fair shake at things. I don't know if Antonio Pierce is necessarily given a fair shake either. And obviously, I'm sure there's a litany of reasons that they fired Antonio Pierce that we're not privy to as the public. We didn't work with him. But just as a strictly, from my gut feeling, I don't think that coaches should only have 1 year, make or break. Yeah, there are some coaches who come in, Jim Harbaugh, he was able to turn the 49ers and now the Chargers around in just a year. But those are the exceptions. I don't feel those are the rules. And oftentimes, coaches who start off hot, really high, they're not able to adjust. They're not able to continue that level of success, and they get fired anyways. So, I mean, obviously there's no perfect way to do it, but I would have liked to see Antonio Pierce get a little more of an opportunity to show what he had as a head coach. And I'm very curious if anyone watching this who is a Raiders fan agrees with me or, disagrees with me. If you're saying, hey, this was not working, this was never going to work, I would really love to hear about that. I need to know, am I entirely wrong in my assumption that Antonio Pierce was not given the fairest of shakes? I mean, he's a young guy. He's only 45 years old. I think, it's kind of trending to more young player focused coaches, whether that's right or wrong, that will play out. But yeah, I don't love that they fired Antonio Pierce this early. And I really, really don't love that they fired Antonio Pierce and they made him do a press conference afterwards, like an end of season press conference. It's kind of like emblematic of the Raiders, the kind of clown show. I'm sorry, I know, historic franchise. I know they probably make tons of money in Las Vegas, but like, yeah, this is a poorly run franchise. It's going to continue to be a poorly run franchise. So let me know your thoughts about all of this one in the comments. All right, so the playoffs are here. Unfortunately, my Dolphins are not in them. They finished just outside the play. Really, not just outside because we lost the last game. But they missed the playoffs. Very sad. But at least I don't have to watch them go to Buffalo and get their asses beat. So that's maybe a positive for my psyche, just given how dominant the Bills have been in the last few years over the Dolphins. But while we're talking about the Bills, let's start off with the AFC. Let's do our picks for this week, starting off with the Los Angeles Chargers and the Houston Texans. So, Chargers 11-6 coming into this one. Texans 10-7. Started off the season very hot, but CJ Stroud has been in somewhat of a sophomore slump, whereas Jim Harbaugh has the Chargers playing great football, very, very Jim Harbaugh football. They're not allowing really Justin Herbert to go out there and sling it all over the place. They're controlling the ball. They're playing good defense. They're playing solidly. I think right now, Chargers are in a better place. This is in Houston, but I think this is the 4:30 game on Saturday, a spot that the Texans are used to being in. And I think that the Chargers get the minor upset, the 5 seed over the 4 seed, despite having the better record, and they move on to the next round of the playoffs. So up next, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers at 10-7, the 6th seed, headed to Baltimore to play the 12-5 Ravens. They played a few weeks ago. It was very close, very competitive. To start the game off, Steelers were actually going in. It was tied 7-7. They were going in to score to make it, a Steelers lead, 14-7. Russell Wilson scrambles. He gets close to the goal line. He fumbles, and I just feel like the momentum never shifted back to the Steelers. My apologies. And the Ravens ran away with it. So Lamar Jackson, for my money, he's the MVP this season. He's had an unbelievable season, over 4,000 passing yards, over 800 rushing yards. He has Derrick Henry now. As he says, he doesn't love playing in the cold. He doesn't love getting tackled. He doesn't think anyone loves doing tackling in the cold. It's going to be cold as the playoffs go on. I mean, Ravens really only have Buffalo and then probably Kansas City. So it's going to be cold. But what do you love to see if you're a Ravens fan in the cold? You want to see Derrick Henry running people over as just the strongest running back in the NFL, the last person anybody wants to tackle. The Steelers, they're in kind of mini turmoil. It's been well reported, or at least alluded to, that there's stuff going on behind the scenes with the defense. Players are potentially not playing their roles. They're not playing well. Russell Wilson has not been playing particularly great the last few games. So I'm going to have to pick the Ravens. I know, not the craziest pick here, playing it pretty safe, but Ravens advance to the divisional round to take on the winner. Well, actually, not the winner of that. No. to face off probably against the Buffalo Bills. So let's talk about the Bills and the Broncos. Broncos get in 10-7. They're the seventh seed. Buffalo Bills 13-4. Josh Allen, the only man who potentially could win the MVP over Lamar Jackson, though again, I don't necessarily see that happening, but he's had a stellar season. He's really put the team on his back. Here, it's going to be cold. Buffalo, not that the Broncos aren't used to the cold, but rookie quarterback, I just don't see, Sean McDermott, his defense losing to Bo Nix in Buffalo. It just feels like one of those, what we've been used to the last few years as the Bills have been, the 2 seed a few times the last few years where they come in, they play a team like the Steelers, they play a 7th seed that's not very good, just got in, and they dominate. So I expect that to happen here. Probably not going to be a particularly close game, setting up a Ravens and Bills matchup in the divisional round, and then the Chiefs will play the Chargers, which, Chargers have played the Chiefs hard this season. They haven't won, but they've gotten close, so that will be very interesting. And then Bills and Ravens, what more can you ask for as an outside observer in the NFL than a premier matchup like that? So those are my picks for the AFC. Let me know. Are they good? Are they bad? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Where am I wrong? Let me know in the comments. So moving on to the NFC to preview their wild card weekend slate of games. We'll start off with the Green Bay Packers, 11-6, versus the 14-3 Philadelphia Eagles, coming off a week where they were able to rest their starters. They didn't go for the all-time rushing record for a single season with Saquon Barkley. Instead, they chose to rest everybody. And if there was like NFL karma gods, I would say that they would lose and it would be very funny and everyone would be like, hey, should have just gone for the record. I don't know if I necessarily believe that the karma gods are all powerful all the time, though, it is something that happens in the NFL occasionally. I do think that the Eagles will, just like they did in week 1, beat the Packers, but just like in week 1 before Jordan Love is hurt, this will be like an exciting, interesting matchup between a 2-7. Very different than what I expect from the 2-7 matchup in the AFC. If you saw that in the last video, or if you're watching the podcast / listening to the podcast, you just heard me speak about it. So I'm picking the Eagles to move on to the divisional round. Commanders and Buccaneers. Commanders the 6th seed, though 12-5, and the Bucs the 3 seed at 10-7. So great year for the Commanders. Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels have just really brought Washington back from the brink. They were in a dark place before. They are cruising right now. And then Baker Mayfield, feel good story for the Bucs, getting Mike Evans his 1,000-yard season at the very end of the game last year. Very good vibes. I think this will be one of the more fun games in the playoffs this year. I think that it'll be a hard fought game to be sure, but I do feel like the Bucs are going to win. Home field advantage, granted, Tampa, nice weather, especially this time of year. I wish I was there instead of where I am, where it's currently 20 degrees and extremely windy. I don't know if you can hear the wind. My filter might catch it, but it is howling outside. I wish I were in Tampa Bay, but I will pick the Buccaneers to advance to the divisional round there. And then I've been pretty, I think, across the board in these last couple of videos, being like, okay, these are the obvious winners, but this next one, we have the Vikings, the 5 seed, 14-3, playing the Rams at 10-7. The Rams are one of those 3 losses for the Vikings. And I think I'm looking at this and I'm saying, hey, Vikings played really bad last game. And the Rams are on an absolute heater, a hot streak, if you will, playing some of the best football that they've played all season. The Vikings had to play for the 1 seed last year. They just played a playoff game last week. My apologies, not last year. Last week, they just played a playoff game for the 1 seed. They lost. They're probably a bit beaten up versus the Rams, who got to rest their starters because they already had the division wrapped up. I'm going to pick the Rams. I don't know if that's a controversial pick. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I just think with Matt Stafford, he's got one last ride here to move on to the divisional round and potentially, really add to his legacy. I mean, he has the Super Bowl win, but he's really not had many deep runs in the playoffs throughout his career, despite being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL during his career. And I think this year, Matt Stafford has another run, maybe to the NFC Championship game, maybe to the Super Bowl. Don't want to get too crazy, but I do like the Rams. I do think that they're a solid team. And in the NFC, Stafford might be the best quarterback of these playoff teams. That is controversial. You can clip that. You can make fun of me if they immediately get bounced here, but I do think, Super Bowl champion got all the experience here in the NFC. I think that the Rams could go on a little run here. So those are my picks for the NFC. Let me know. Do you agree? Disagree? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, that is it for this episode of the Wicked Good Sports podcast. A little shorter than the last one, but just wanted to make a little bit of something for you here, something else to listen to while you're at work, while you're driving to work, and you're bored. Just throw it on. Hopefully, you can hear my voice talk about the NFL for a little bit, and just relax, or get very mad at me because I picked your team to lose in the playoffs. And let me know in the comments. Rank or give me a bad rating or a good rating on iTunes, depending on if I picked your playoff team here. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up on the channel. Please stay here. We have the power play segment that we do with Chris. We talk about hockey, and at the buzzer with Jack and Ryan, where we talk all about the NBA. I'm hoping to incorporate them more into this standalone podcast, but not yet. We're not there yet. So please do check that out on the YouTube channel. That's Wicked Good Sports. And check out our channels, Wicked Good Everything, Those Fake Nerds, Better Radio. If you like podcasts, well, I got a lot of podcasts for you on Better Radio. It's a whole podcasting channel. Thank you so much for checking this out, and we'll see you in the next one.